Welcome to the ultimate song contest, where everything makes sense. Or does it? It is complete Eurodada.
Yes, and on that note, welcome to ESC BART. I am a Eurovision analyst, and today we will have a quite interesting video. Is the EBU, or better said, the Eurovision Song Contest, neutral, or is it a geopolitical stage? Let's dive in. So, let's look at this historical timeline. A timeline of the most significant political disqualifications and forced withdrawals. The first one was in 1993, the expulsion of former Yugoslavia. The Federal Republic of Yugoslavia was formally expelled from the contest due to ongoing United Nations sanctions during the Yugoslav wars. 1977 and 2005, the Arab state withdrawals. Tunisia was set to debut in 1977, but withdrew to avoid broadcasting Israeli content. Decades later, in 2005, Lebanon was forced to withdraw their entry after refusing to guarantee they would broadcast Israel's performance. 2009, Georgia's Anti-Putin anthem. Following the 2008 Russo-Georgian War, Georgia submitted the song We Don't Wanna Put In. The EBU rejected the track for its thinly veiled political lyrics, targeting Russian Prime Minister Vladimir Putin, and Georgia subsequently withdrew rather than change the song. And then we had the Kyiv ban in 2017. When Ukraine hosted the contest, they legally barred the Russian entrant from entering the country because he had previously performed in Russian-annexed Crimea. The EBU offered remote participation, but Russia rejected it and withdrew. 2021, the disqualification of Belarus. Amid mass protests against President Alexander Lukashenko, Belarus submitted a song that the EBU deemed a piece of political propaganda, mocking the pro-democracy movement. After a second submitted song, it was also rejected on the same grounds. Belarus was fully disqualified. And then we had 2022, Russia's total expulsion. Days after Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine, the EBU initially resisted the calls for a ban, citing the contest's non-political nature. However, following intense pressure and threats of mass withdrawal from other European broadcasters, the EBU formally expelled Russia to prevent the competition from being brought into disrepute. And then we have 2026, of course, the Gaza war boycotts. Following the EBU's decision to allow Israel to continue competing amidst the ongoing war in Gaza, multiple nations took a stand. Spain, Ireland, Slovenia, and the Netherlands officially withdrew from the 2026 contest, citing humanitarian concerns and accusing the event of being dominated by, yes, geopolitical interests. As you can see, there are quite some examples that the EBU, or better said, the Eurovision Song Contest, isn't neutral at all. As you can see by these examples, there's a core contradiction. You have the rules by the EBU, and then we have reality. So the EBU utilizes Rule 2.7, which strictly bans political statements, lyrics, or gestures. Yet, the history of the contest shows that politics doesn't need a flag to be visible. It embeds itself even directly into the scoreboard. And by that I mean, for example, block voting. So geopolitical alliances are not a new flaw. They are a feature of the voting architecture. We can categorize these into predictable patterns. Think about the Nordic alliance. Exceptionally, loyalty has been established between Sweden, Norway, Denmark, Finland, and Iceland. You have the Baltic and Slavic blocs, historical and linguistical ties that heavily influence mutual points distribution. And then you have the diaspora effect. Large migrant populations, think about Turkish, Ukrainian, or Balkan communities across Western Europe, reliably mobilizing the televote for their home countries, regardless of song quality. And then, of course, we had the collapse of jury integrity. To counter predictable public voting, the EBU reintroduced professional juries. However, this fix introduced a different flavor of corruption. In 22-23, we had a turning point. The disqualification of 6 national juries due to irregular cross-voting patterns, essentially trading top points in a pre-arranged pact that proved that even industry professionals are susceptible to geopolitical coordination. So, when global tensions peak, these juries often operate under implicit national directives to favor allies and freeze out adversaries. So these are all big influences on the results on that scoreboard. So recent years have pushed the contest to its absolute breaking point. The illusion of neutrality shattered under the weight of active, polarizing conflicts. So public voting has shifted from an aesthetic choice to a tool of mass solidarity of protest. High-stakes global conflicts have resulted in massive spikes in televotes for specific nations, driven by external political campaigns rather than musical merit. Delegations are no longer mingling in harmony. Backstage friction, country boycotts, and press room protests have made the hostile global environment impossible to ignore. So, to counter these effects, the EBU is implementing more and more rules. But the big question is the EBU, by imposing more and more rules, slowly putting itself to death? That's the question. For nearly 70 years, the Eurovision Song Contest has been one of the world's most extraordinary television events. It's a place where music, culture, and national identity come together on one big stage. Millions tune in every year for the songs, but they stay for something much bigger. The emotion, the stories, and the unforgettable moments. Eurovision has never been just another music competition. It's special. It reflects Europe itself, diverse, passionate, unpredictable, and yes, sometimes quite controversial. But as we move towards Eurovision 2027, many fans have started asking an important question. Is Eurovision slowly regulating itself to death? The European Broadcasting Union has introduced a series of new regulations designed to protect that neutrality, to protect the contest from political issues, voting manipulation, and of course, outside interference. The EBU calls these measures necessary. Supporters call them common sense. But critics, however, believe something much more important is at stake. They argue that in trying to make Eurovision completely neutral, the EBU could be removing the very element that made the contest so unique. So, are these new rules protecting Eurovision, or are they quietly changing its identity forever? So, for years, Eurovision has found itself caught in the middle of international conflicts. Think about the Russia exclusion, growing political tensions, the major reform package. So, the EBU has no other choice to implement new rules. And some of those rules are professional juries that are returning to the semifinals, televoting that is limited, restrictions on promotional campaigns, stricter rules for jury members. So all kind of new regulations, but the bigger question is, on paper, these changes appear logical. Protect the contest, reduce outside influence, keep Eurovision focused on music. But here's the difficult question. Can art ever truly be neutral? Throughout history, music has always reflected society. Artists write about joy, loss, injustice, identity. So, trying to separate music from the world around it, it never has been easy. And perhaps it will never be easy. So, if you ask me what the EBU is trying to do to stay neutral is quite impossible. Imagine such a big event as Eurovision Contest. It can never be separated from today's world. It cannot be disconnected from politics. It will always have an influence. So at the end of the day, the conclusion that we can make as Eurovision prepares for 27, the EBU faces an incredible, difficult balancing act. No organization wants its flagship entertainment show to become a battlefield for international politics. So protecting the contest from propaganda, coordinated voting and political pressure is undoubtedly important. But there's another risk. In trying to eliminate every possible controversy, the EBU could also eliminate some of Eurovision's greatest strengths. Because Eurovision never has been perfect. It has always been emotional, unexpected, messy, and yes, sometimes quite controversial. And perhaps that's exactly why so many people love it. The challenge is finding the balance between protecting the competition without stripping away its heart. Only time will tell whether these new regulations strengthen Eurovision or slowly transform it into something entirely different. So, that's about it for today. This was a quite very interesting topic. We'll see what happens in 27. But for the meantime, stay happy and regardless, stay united. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.